Hello friends, this is Shoshana Shea, and you might recognize my little mini sketchbook that I've been working in. It's coming up to the end of July, and I have done quite a lot of the tutorials that are available during the month of July related to painting with watercolor. And here you can see some of my watercolors out. This is the set that I tried using some time ago, and in a little bit I'll show you one picture that I tried to do using these paints, and I'll tell you as we go through it the problem that I have. I think it'll be a little bit obvious as you look at it. This is the set of paints that I've been using, and as you can see, it doesn't have the possibility of where to prepare your paints when you mix it, as they recommend to put it on some kind of like the inside of the lid of the watercolor paints. Some people use also certain ceramic dishes to prepare their paints and to make puddles of paint. So for quite a number of the pictures I wasn't using this because I hadn't really thought about it. I was using just these paints. And eventually I progressed to using the inside of the lid of the set of paints. So let's perhaps put that set aside because we're not going to be painting right now. I'm going to just share a little bit of my progress as I've been learning with the watercolor. So the first page that I did was to do with, let me get here, the first tutorial had to do with painting popsicles, learning a certain watercolor technique. And because I was painting in a mini sketchbook, I decided to do my popsicles mini instead of doing just 4 on a page. I did a whole lot of them. And then I decided to add a couple of variations. Unfortunately, the black dot on this one smudged, but there are some 2 or 3 toned popsicles over there and one with a smiley. And because the majority of my book was going to be with flowers, I put some leaves in. I didn't yet add flowers, but here on the next page I followed a tutorial for painting a certain design of roses, since I love doing roses. So that was day 2, the first 2 days. Let's see, the next one had to do with a certain technique that we'd learnt, which I then used as a background in this painting. And the technique that we were learning with the popsicles, I expanded to use in this wall that I did. And then because I was doing flowers, added the flowers on. So that was a little bit of fun there. There I had some more backgrounds that I painted and added some flowers, adding a little bit of mixed media. Then I tried doing an abstract flower design, and that's my version of it. This one wasn't painting. Here I was following a tutorial with a certain flower, and I put 2 flowers. They just did 1. This was another one, also flowers. That's a picture that I demonstrated. That one I didn't quite like how the painting came out, but here was another tutorial that I followed for an abstract vase of flowers. And this one now was a kind of a path with 3 levels to it. I think the tutorial had 4 levels to it, and I was using just these colors and then added some flowers. So that was a tutorial that I followed, gaining insight as to a technique of grading the color, going from the yellow through all the various different shades that it can come to. And in my paint box, it came starting to go towards the reds and maybe the purples. So then I added some flowers in the corner because it's got to all be flowers in this book. And this was a a tutorial of painting some flowers. This was dandelion flowers again, following a tutorial, and here's another one. I lost count completely as to what day we're on, but as I say, quite some of the flowers that I was doing were more than just one tutorial a day, and sometimes I redid a tutorial. Here, if you remember from a watercolor workbook that I had used that had some hydrangeas in it, I think. Here I tried to follow drawing it a little bit more effectively instead of the very simplified version that was in the workbook, and that was what I managed to come up with. In this case, I wasn't actually following a tutorial as far as I know. I looked at a picture and then painted it using some of the techniques I'd gained from some of the tutorials. Here I was doing a background again that I put a flower in the middle, and here again I used some pen and ink drawing that I used some ideas that I'd gained from a tutorial and used that to paint up my own picture. So that one wasn't following a tutorial. This was just doing some fun kids drawings. This again is not a tutorial. This one actually, I was doing some process art and it came out like a flight of stairs, and as I looked, it looked like kind of a hint of a heart, which I then painted up a little bit more strongly. I was going to write out Aliyat Nashama, but I used an H instead of a T, so whatever, it's also an Aliyah going up. And I put some flowers over there, so that wasn't really following a tutorial. That was some process art I was doing using some techniques that I'd learnt in one of the tutorials. So it's a little bit of a adaptation, again using some backgrounds. And here was a seascape from a tutorial. This tutorial was using a specific technique with the paintbrush, so learning how to control the pressure of the brush, and I did it there sort of as ribbons that I then put some flowers on. I don't remember whether I did some more of that one. There we go. This was another tutorial that I followed with flowers, and this one with leaves is the one that followed on from that tutorial, learning about how to do the pressure, to control the pressure of the paintbrush, which then gave a nice effect of certain leaves. And here I was doing some butterflies. That wasn't following a tutorial. This little one, the tutorial that I followed, had some cats, and because the little book that we're looking at is a flower theme, so since it was childlike kind of cats, I put childlike kind of flowers around. It was a bit of fun. And on this background, there was a cat that was kind of peeping out, so I went over the outline, then painted it in using some techniques I had learnt in a tutorial, and filled in the flowers. So that was a bit of fun. And because it was the 3 weeks, we had to do a Kotel picture, didn't we? So there was a Kotel picture with the background before putting the flowers down on the side, and the background I did kind of a frame and with the watercolor technique that I'd learnt, and then put in the Kotel using some drawing, some pen and ink drawing. And in this case, the Kotel is also preparing for a painting that I need to fix up a corner of it. So we'll get to that later on, as you see in my decluttering and starting to prepare some of my art for sale. Those 2 pages we did already. And here was a little bit of process art. That 2 profiles came out, so I drew them in with pen and ink and added some flowers. And over here you can see what happens when I try to use these more simple beginners watercolor that came with the watercolor workbook, is that the paint doesn't quite work on this paper. The paper was not quite right. The paints are not quite right. It kind of gives an interesting effect, but I'm considering what kind of picture I could turn that into and have that as kind of a feature in the picture. I haven't decided that yet, but instead of wasting a page of painting, I'm going to see what I can do to turn that into a picture. And then I did another background that I started to try to do. Here we go. A background that I started to try to do some pears onto, and they didn't quite work covering up what I hoped would be a table surface. So since that wasn't actually how the tutorial was going, I decided to see if I could improve my pears or my painting of pears, and did another little kind of a still life, which is this one. And as you can see, I have loads more to learn and there are lots more tutorials to follow. So I'm hoping to not call it a day, but one lesson I would learn is that this little mini sketchbook, which is supposed to be possible to use with mixed media, is not the best paper to be using for watercolor. So although I have done quite a lot of watercolor paintings, you can see the extent to which the paper buckles. And I'm needing to use some better quality, perhaps some kind of a cotton watercolor paper that's specifically for watercolor to improve my painting of watercolors. And that's my little bit of showing you my progress in the month of the sections related to watercolor. I hope it's been interesting for you to look at. And I do have quite a lot of ideas of videos to follow, some sharing the decluttering we're doing, some sharing the progress of my art, some perhaps showing actual process of how I'm producing the pictures, and a number of other videos. So do join me on the journey. Subscribe if you're interested in these kinds of videos. Let me know which kinds of videos you're interested in seeing more of. And another video. And I wish you a very blessed day or evening. For now.